He left. Never saw him again. But he had done so much. And it was just what was required.
The first alone experience I had with Srila Prabhupada was in Seattle. At the time, after I finished decorating that temple, he came up. It was a glorious success. And we found a horrible, they'd found a bad place for him, and he didn't like it. And Jayananda and Govinda Dasi and I went out in the middle of the night, in the middle of a fog, and were driving wildly around chanting and praying for a place for Prabhupada. We were driving up, I think, on Capitol Hill, and all of a sudden, in this dense fog, where we could not even see the road, a sign emerged that said, "For rent." And we said, that's what we were chanting, that's what happened. And so not one of us looked like the sort of person you'd rent to, because we all had shaved heads, and Govinda Dasi was wearing so we heard Jayananda, who always looks pretty much like a ordinary, Joe. He got out of the truck with without his short hair and wearing his karmi clothes, went and rented the place. It was gorgeous. When we finally saw what it was like in the morning, it was a garden apartment with like windows, and when you looked out, you were looking into the flower beds, because most of the room was under the ground, and it was halfway out of the ground, so you could actually see beautiful lawns and flowers and stuff. And Prabhupada loved it. So in that room, Harsharani and Govinda Dasi were his servants, and he was living there, and I happened to come over for some reason or another, and we were all sitting in Prabhupada's room. Oh yes, Srila Prabhupada was talking to me about the possibility of going to New Vrindavan and building dioramas. He wanted to start a museum, fate museum type thing in New Vrindavan at that time. So he and I and another devotee were there, and then somehow or other, and I'm never quite sure how it happened, he and I ended up alone in the room. And it was Srila Prabhupada's room. He always had a coffee table, which he used as a desk, because he liked to sit on the floor. And he had an armoire next to it, a steel cabinet, such as he used to have in India, and in it he used to keep his correspondence and books and things like that. And Srila Prabhupada was behind the desk, and he was showing me, incidentally to doing something else, how he would open up an envelope with a letter opener, and then use the envelope for his reply, and then to save paper, and for his first draft, and then he'd draft it out again onto the letter when he had it down the way he wanted it. And somehow he had asked me to do something, and in the end, I ended up behind his desk, and he ended up on the other side. I was so on my toes and alarmed by the experience of being alone with Prabhupada. It was just like being with Queen Elizabeth or Indra or something of that sort, all alone. And you say, "Oh my God, what am I going to do now? I have no instruction. I don't even know what to say," because I wasn't just initiated. And I had, been a part of the Hridayashri. I was still sort of psychedelicizing a little bit. And Srila Prabhupada was standing there, and I'm sitting there totally mortified, wringing my hands and squirming my toes and wondering what to do next, and not wanting to leave by any means, but not knowing what to do if I stayed. Then Srila Prabhupada looked at me and said, "We should always be considering what is my duty," he said. And I'm thinking, duty, okay. And I was been hearing impaired since I was young, and I didn't know that. And it's only the last few years I got hearing aids. So I didn't have any hearing aids. So what to speak of Prabhupada's accent and my inability to hear, I was having a hard time understanding, plus the psychedelics residually floating around in my brain cells. So Prabhupada points at this coffee table and says, "Do you see this ant?" And I've been looking very carefully, and I know Srila Prabhupada is the external representative of Super Soul, that when Prabhupada says there's an ant, there's an ant. And I looked at the table, and there was no ant there. And he said, "Do you see that ant?" And I didn't know what he meant. I said, "There's no ant." And I said, sort of like yes and no combined. Because I didn't want to say no and appear stupid, to not see the spiritual or whatever ant was there. And I didn't want to say yes and be proven a liar, because I couldn't see the ant and I didn't know where it would be found. So then Srila Prabhupada looked at me intensely, as though that the ant issue now being solved, he wanted to get on to real business, and he said, "My duty," he said, "is to, my job," he said, "is to understand what is my duty to this ant." I said, "Oh no." I said, "Not only there's an ant that I can't see, but now I have a duty to it." I said, "What am I going to do?" He said, "Somehow," Prabhupada looked at me beseechingly almost, "somehow I have to help this ant." He said, and maybe I can chant. And he said, reaches down, he says, maybe I can chant Hare Krishna. Or he went like this, feed it a little prasadam. He said, if we can help one ant become Krishna conscious, then our whole movement is a glorious success. And then I realized it was a pure metaphor. That Prabhupada was aware of my bewilderment is pretty obvious. That he used it to make a point was excellent. And there I was, instructed by the invisible ant to whom I had a duty to feed and to chant, and that if I did so, it was our movement, whole movement was a success.
Saraswati, myself, and Jamuna got the whole crowd chanting, and it was we were quite successful. But he saw Saraswati. We were there, but he saw Saraswati, and he liked that she was getting everybody to chant. So later on, he gave her a deity. Did you know that? He gave her a deity, and for her to worship, very young, 3, 4 years old, 5, I'm not quite sure. And one day they were playing, almost like transcendental dolls. The deities were there. Saraswati had become quite attached to the deities. Prabhupada took the deity and hid it behind his back. Saraswati was looking, where's my Krishna? Prabhupada said, where's Krishna? Where's your Krishna? Like that. And she became very upset, and she was crying. Where's my Krishna? He let her cry. She said, do you have him? Where is he? And he played, no. And then she cried very much. She was really crying a lot. And then he said, I have him. Here he is. I just wanted to see how you would feel the separation for your Krishna.
So then came to publish Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada was so determined to publish it, but there was no money to print it ourselves. And anyway, Allen Ginsberg, who was a friend, although he wasn't a Vaishnava, wasn't a devotee, I mean, he had his own lifestyle, but he was very sympathetic. He had been to India. He liked chanting. Prabhupada instructed him, chant Hare Krishna before you do any poetry reading, and he used to do that. And he gave Prabhupada first harmonium, which he had brought from India, and he would give donations. And with the immigration thing, he was helping. And anyway, when the manuscript was ready for printing, we gave it to Alan, and he was very enthusiastic. He sent it to his publishers, but they rejected it. And then he sent it to some other publishers he knew. Again, everyone rejected it. And after about 6 months of trying it, and he just lost interest. Everyone was rejecting it. So then Prabhupada gave the manuscript to Ray Rama, who was the editor of the Back to Godhead. And so he tried, and he was sending it around to academic publishers, and again, everyone rejected. You know, you get the little letter in the mail, thank you very much, however, this doesn't fit into our plans, this and that and everything. So then after about 6 months, then he gave up. So then Prabhupada gave it to me to do. Anyway, by that time, I had absolutely no faith that this was, because I could see that there was no commercial value to this manuscript. I mean, every page there was Krishna consciousness, Krishna consciousness. And I was thinking, well, if you're not Krishna conscious and you're not interested in Krishna consciousness, you're not going to be interested in this commentary. There's no fancy poetry or scholarly, the footnotes and academics, and I had read different Bhagavad Gitas, no esoteric things, and so I just had no faith, and I didn't know what to do, and I was going to bookstores and trying to see how they were doing, and then to learn how to get a book published, and I was going to the library and reading and trying to find out how to do this, but I didn't know what to do.